Transforming Education webinar series. My name is Maggie Taylor. I am the Advocacy Coordinator for Character.org and the moderator for this webinar. This webinar, Creating Peace in Schools Around the World, is sponsored by Global Peace Foundation, One World Youth, and Character.org. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to remind you all that questions throughout the webinar is encouraged. On the gray screen on the right-hand side of your computer screen, there's a questions box. I will keep track of all the questions that you type into the question box, and our experts will answer them at the end of the webinar. Our panel of experts today include Dr. Michelle Borba. Dr. Borba is an award-winning education psychologist and author. We also have Claire Lawrenson, the U.S. Education Manager for the Tony Blair Faith Foundation. And then lastly, we'll hear from Dr. Tony Devine. He is the Vice President for Education at the Global Peace Foundation. At this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Michelle Borba.
Oh, good morning to you. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I know to you as well. What I'd like to do is share with you ideas of what I found as I tour the world and over 5 different continents, and some of the best ideas. And it's based on a book I wrote called Unselfie. I think that the base of peace is something called empathy. The ability to feel with someone, and I'm greatly concerned that this particular wonderful virtue is actually lying dormant with kids everywhere around the world. In fact, the United States is at a 40% dip. But when we look at the best schools, the best organizations, the best societies that do create peace, this is doable. They're almost always based on this thing called empathy. And I want to start with where I think the best of the best I've seen anywhere in the world. It's called the Seeds of Peace. It's a summer camp, extraordinary summer camp out in Otisville, Maine. It was designed by a gentleman named John Wallach, who was an AP Wire reporter who said, let's forget the adults. Let's go for the kids. Let's figure out how to help them become a seed, and maybe if we give them the strategies that help them become more peace-loving and learn how to reduce conflict and open up their hearts to others, they can go back to their country and actually become a seed of peace. And that's exactly what happened. What began to happen about 30 years ago was the first group came. These are children who were identified as leaders throughout the world by their teachers. They came to the camp. Where they came from, imagine this: Israel, Palestine, Egypt, Jordan, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, as well as the United States and Britain. They came hating one another, literally, having absolutely no trust. But within about 3 weeks, what began to happen, because of their facilitators and because of the kinds of strategies they did, the kids began to say that my heart opened, empathy opened. I now see that the enemy has a face. And the University of Chicago has been tracking these children to see that not only did they go back to their country, a war-torn zone in many cases, but they also are continuing to advocate for peace. Why? What's going on at the Seeds of Peace that we as educators, we as organizers can help those children learn? I began to see that what really was happening is that these kids were learning habits that, because of the environment they were put in, which was warm, inviting, incredible teachers and facilitators that cared about kids, but also training kids daily to practice habits. It opened up their hearts. They began to use the empathy, and as a result, these are the habits in the book I wrote called Unselfie. They began to become a seed of peace. So the first step we need to do, I think, critical, is develop empathy for our children, develop them early, because empathy can be cultivated. Probably the person who can help us the most on this was a phenomenal social psychologist named Muzaffar Sharif, who was at age 12, his life was saved by not being the one who was executed in his entire community. He spent his entire life then trying to figure out, why are some people more peace-loving? And the first thing he discovered is that, above all else, what we need to do is create environments like the Seeds of Peace in our classrooms, in our clubs, in our homes, where children began to open up to people who are not like them. Because you see, we empathize with more people like us. How do we help our kids empathize with people who are, if I'm a Palestinian and Israeli, how do I empathize with them? And if I'm black, I'm white. Finland is in doing one idea, so too is Denmark. And what they're doing is daily empathizing building strategies where it's actually required. Students are practicing it's my turn and it's your turn, are listening to one another. And as a result, the seeds begin to open up where we create a caring community with our children. The other thing that I love was the Shipley School. What they're doing is actually training kids in a empathy building habit or a conflict reducing habit. But not only are the children learning it and practicing it daily, but then what they're doing is actually showing their parents what the skill looks like by role-playing it and then inviting their parents at a drop-in once a month to learn the new skill. As a result, the skill is more likely to be able to transfer it in the real life, in the real world. So they don't just use it in our classrooms, in our schools, but to go back into their community and use it. And there's dozens of social emotional learning skills that our children need. Seeds of Peace Kids said that one of the core ones that nobody is teaching them how to do is how to listen. I loved this one. I learned this one at Los Angeles, gang-infested environments. But what they're doing here, and this is right outside the banks of the school on the other side, is that daily what the children are learning are peace-loving kinds of environments, like rock, paper, scissors, how to get along on the playground, how to reduce conflicts. And as a result, when they go back to the classrooms, when they go back into their own homes, they're continuing to practice because it's ongoing seeds of peace, but they're seeds of peace kind of strategies. This was in one of my favorite places outside Nicaragua, where kids are learning cooperative learning strategies so that they learn to get along. What we're seeing in each one of these incredibly wonderful, peace-loving kinds of strategies is that kids are practicing the skill so they can use it in real life, but they're also embedded and weaving these in so that, yes, they're learning to get along, but they're also boosting academic achievement. They also are learning practicing habits, how to practice empathy so they learn to get along. One of the best ones we've seen anywhere is restorative justice strategies. I learned this one certainly in one of the places that I was haunted by, which is in Rwanda. After genocide, getting kids, getting families, getting communities to learn to forgive and to one another can be extraordinary, but they're doing it, and that means we too can if we teach them the habit. One of the simplest ones that we're doing all over the world is teaching kids to take a stand, and that is first, whenever you have a problem, stop and chill. Take a moment. Take a breath, because you can't solve a problem when you're out of control. Tell the person what's wrong, but tell it in a way that's respectful. Don't downgrade the other person, just listen. Now, together, start coming up with alternatives. What else can we do in order to be more peace-loving? What else can we do to solve this problem together? Now, let's narrow the choices until we find one that works for all of us and then decide on the best one. It's called restorative justice. This one was outside San Diego in a very, very difficult gang-oriented society. But what's happening is the kids are learning peace and actually learning to support one another. And so conflicts are going down. These children are learning the strategies until finally they live it. They live empathy, and they live empathy without it because they've learned the skills. I want to just be clear that if we really want to develop empathy with our children, we first need to develop it. Then they need to practice it until finally they can get out and live it for the rest of their lives without it. It develops skills, and there's skills that we know from just looking at altruistic rescuers that we know were raised in environments that were warm, supportive, and expected those expectations for peace. But it's also based on 9 habits. 9 habits that are teachable. We can cultivate it. And if we create the kind of environments that we do together, what a difference we can make on children's lives. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Dr. Borba. I didn't see any questions come through during your presentation, and I know that you have a busy schedule to get back to, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Claire Lawrenson.
Hi everyone. I'm Claire, and as Maggie, and thank you, Dr. Borba, for your presentation. I think what I'm going to share about in terms of our program, Generation Global, fits really nicely and builds upon sort of what you've already shared around empathy and the stories around sort of seeds of peace and the dialogue work and the habits that they instill. And we're a global education program, as our name suggests, that equips teachers, and really teachers so they can then equip their students with the dialogue skills and experiences to navigate difference in a respectful, open-minded, and peaceful way. So we're really using dialogue as sort of the seeds of peace to sort of use the same phrase as the actual seeds of peace that Dr. Barbara was sharing with us. And our aim is to really, prepare students with the skills to navigate difference. And so we do this through providing free resources for teachers called the Essentials of Dialogue, which I'll walk us through sort of briefly, as well as other resources around global issues and global UN days. So we're working with Cooperation Ireland, and I know that the Global Peace Foundation is as well around this year's Peace Day, September 21st. And every year we do, which I'll walk through, sort of produce resources as well as do facilitated video conferences and online dialogue around peacemaking and reconciliation and how can I be a peacemaker. And then we also hold a competition with our schools. And we have more than 1,000 schools part of the program, and it's now actually 40 countries. And we connect them in video conferences and online dialogue, as I stated. So this is just really briefly, just if, for those of you that are educators, sort of what we offer for free to schools.
Sorry, Claire. Hold on one second.
Yes.
Could you accept the present screen? You should have seen a pop-up come. Okay, there we go. Great.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
You can see
couldn't see my screen before. Okay, and now. Okay, well that's fine. You didn't really miss much. I was just showing everyone, and you can see a copy of the PowerPoint, just walking through sort of these first few slides. Oh, I was just saying that sort of one of our 4 pillars is sort of the safety, even though it's a free program and anyone that's an educator and works with students can join. We just make sure to vet everyone that's part of the community because for many of the countries that we work in, and just want to make sure that the students are dialoguing, and since we promote sort of open dialogue and have moderators that are moderating that at all days and nights of the year, I just really want to make sure it stays a safe community. And then on our site, it's generation.global. You can see all of our resources, so I'm going to show us some of those. And sort of our main resource being the Essentials of Dialogue. And here, it's a toolkit. I don't like to call it a curriculum. That really you as a teacher can pick and choose what works well for you. And the dialogue skills that we're really sort of stressing through these different activities that can be easily integrated into what you're already teaching are sort of active listening, responding skills, critical thinking, learning how to speak from one's own perspective, and then students sort of build upon that to think about sort of what makes me me, what's shaped my identity, how do I have a conversation about what's important to me with someone who may have very different things that are important to them in sort of respectful and peaceful ways and disagree in a way that sort of builds greater understanding rather than divides people. And then influences and values and beliefs. So what's shaped my perspective, what's shaped my point of view. And all of this is sort of the Essentials of Dialogue is really our first module, sort of the groundwork, the basic skills that, they're really basic peacemaking skills. But we also have resources around different UN days, and one of those being sort of Peace Day this September. So we have resources here that you could download for free, where your students can, and in your classroom you can sort of explore ideas around peace and different perspectives on peace, and how can I be a peacemaker, and whom do I want to make peace with, and so your students can sort of have that conversation and explore different viewpoints and perspective on what it means, what peace means. And then we also are connecting schools in video conferences So we have schools in Ireland, and India, and Pakistan, Ukraine, Mexico, and U.S. That are connecting in video conferences later on this month to talk about peacemaking. So they're going to sort of be led by a facilitator through topics of sort of, where do I see peace, and what divides people, where is there a need for peace, and here, the students are challenged by the facilitator, and also challenged, and as you prepare through the resources, to really think about all of this from their own perspective and share their own experiences, their own point of view, as well as sort of the meaning and significance behind their experiences. And we find that we do all sorts of video conferences on all sorts of different dialogue topics, but really I think what makes the dialogue a sort of a meaningful one is a lot of the sort of support that we offer behind the scenes, in terms of particularly sort of the facilitator, along with the resources that students can really practice the dialogue skills. And many of our teachers just take the resources and use them in the classrooms, and don't engage in the video conferences and team topics. And that's really what we feel most passionate about, is sort of equipping schools, teachers, and equipping the next generation with the dialogue skills to be peacemakers, and really sort of plant the seeds of peace for the next generation. So for Peace Day, we're really excited that we do have a series of special guests that will also join the video conferences, that are experts in the field, that are actually working in peacemaking, working in conflict zones in a variety of different contexts. So on our website you can sort of see more about and read more about these guests. And then sort of the third thing that we do around Peace Day, so the resources, and then sort of the video conferences and online dialogue, is peace events. So we sort of, it's not I was going to say the dialogue is not enough, but I think the dialogue is the groundwork, and is peacemaking in itself. Learning how to navigate difference, learning how to understand one another. Those are all that is learning to be a peacemaker. But we also encourage students to sort of take what they've learned through the video conferences, what they've learned through studying dialogue and practicing it, out into their communities, and out into their wider school and their wider communities. And so this is a picture from one of our Peace Day events last year, and you're looking, they brought together 40,000 members of their community. This is a school in Tamil Nadu, India. And they made peace pledges and crafts for peace and letters to their community to spread the messages of peace across their community. And you can watch a video if you click on the link in your PowerPoint about sort of more about their peace event. And then these are two other pictures. I'll sort of point. The one on the bottom here is from, everyone's, sorry about this. Is a school in Egypt that brought together 2,000 students of different faiths, such as Christians, Jews, Muslims, to discuss peace and conflict in their communities and their desire to make peace between the different religious groups. So that's just sort of two examples. We spent yesterday going through the first round of events from this year, and I have to say there are some absolutely incredibly inspiring things that our young people are doing across the world to spread not messages of peace, but also practice peacemaking and bring the conversation up to sort of the forefront of their communities, and then be peacemakers. I guess I just also wanted to sort of share here that if you're interested in becoming part of Generation Global, downloading our resources, but also we would love to have your students in a video conference and sort of practice their peacemaking dialogue skills on a variety of topics, not just sort of Peace Day, but we have human rights video conferences, gender, Women's Day video conferences, Talk Back to Hate video conferences on bullying. We do video conferences on all sorts of different topics throughout the school year. So feel free to go on our website, or you can reach out to me to learn more. And then sort of lastly, we also do online dialogue. So we're connecting students in teams for 4-week projects. We call it team topics around Peace Day as well. And so they're going to discuss the same dialogue on the same topics as in the video conferences, but sort of in groups online. And we also do that on a variety of other topics. And sort of, in our day and age, I mean, so much of the communication that we all have, and I think especially, even more so, I'm one of the youngest people on my team, and yet I feel so out of date in terms of technology that when I go visit school, students are using. So much of their communication is happening online, and so that's why we've just sort of built a whole new online community and are really developing, want students, teachers to bring dialogue online so that students can develop the healthy social media habits, healthy online practices, and instead of sort of shutting social media and online dialogue out of the classroom, banning certain sites and this and that, bring it in and use it as a teaching tool. And so our online community that was just launched this summer has some really amazing functions that get students to practice and reflect on their dialogue skills, but their online dialogue skills. And we're also partnering with Snapchat to do a story, a live story between the schools this October. So if that's of interest, feel free to reach out to me, because we're looking to engage as many schools as possible in a moderated live story where students will be able to snap to one another. And we've also created resources to help them think about what makes a good snap, how can Snapchat be used as a peacemaking dialogue tool. So I'll sort of end there, and I'm happy to take any questions. But I just sort of, to reiterate what what our mission is, what our hope is that students will, the next generation will have the skills and the experience to navigate difference, and therefore really be peacemakers as they lead in the next generation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire.
Work is very much involved in transforming education around the world so that it is relevant in today's world. And we're working with educators and change makers around the world at the grassroots, national and global levels to ensure that students graduate ready to succeed in all aspects of their life in the 21st century. When education is relevant, students are better prepared to contribute to employment and economic development, societal and political stability, and ethical societies free from corruption. I'm just in Ireland right now. I'm actually in Dublin, but for the last week I've been in Northern Ireland, and I was there for 2 weeks before then. Northern Ireland, if you may have been familiar with a period from the late 60s to the late 90s, it was a period where 3,000 Protestants and Catholics were killed in violence. Northern Ireland is made up of 40% Catholic and 60% Protestants. And since in 1998 there was a Good Friday Agreement created that stopped the bloodshed. At that time there was like 20 walls like this one that you're seeing right now that divided Protestant and Catholic neighborhoods and communities. Since then, these walls have actually increased to 102 walls. So 94% English and Irish, Catholic and Protestant. Also, the housing and neighborhoods are segregated as well. So a lot of organizations working in schools and working with students to move forward from this past, from this history. So one of the great organizations that's doing this is called Community Relationships in Schools. And they're working with Protestant and Catholic schools in Northern Ireland to bring peace between these students. And one of the efforts that I've been very impressed with is a teacher with her entire class from a Catholic school on a certain weekday will actually go to their corresponding Protestant school just in the next neighborhood, and the Catholic and Protestant teacher will co-teach, and the students will actually mingle and share that classroom, and then this will be reciprocated the following week. So efforts like this are actually helping to build understanding between these two sides in schools, on a continual basis. There's also tremendous efforts being made at the community level with students. In community centers, we visited a number of these, where students from various schools will come in the evening from the Catholic and Protestant side and build empathy, as Michelle spoke about. This idea of empathy is very important because it helps to alleviate fear, and it helps to build gradually trust between the two sides. The shot you're looking at here, right, the top right-hand photo, is from, let me see here. Yeah, let me just go back to the PowerPoint here again. Is Maze Long Kesh Prison. It's just outside Belfast, Northern Ireland. This is where prisoners on the Protestant and Catholic side and criminals were actually served terms. And now this facility is called the Icon Expedition Center, has actually been created on this 374-acre site. And a group of students have gotten together this year across 400 schools in Northern Ireland and also schools in the Republic of Ireland. And they've come up with this campaign called Amazing the Space. So Amazing is actually a takeoff on the Maze Long Kesh Prison, the name Maze. They translated that or transformed that into Amazing the Space. So during the International Day of Peace on Wednesday, the 21st of September this year, 5,000 young people, students from divisive backgrounds, from English, Irish, Catholic, Protestant, are actually going to come together here, and they're going to share their commitment to peace. They've been working on these peace pledges over the summer, and also various acts of peace as well. So Amazing the Space aligns closely with the core aims of the vision of the Northern Ireland Assembly initiative called Together, Building a Unified Community. And this generation of youth, our generation of youth today is the largest in the world, and perhaps more important now than ever before is that young people are engaged in active, systematic, and meaningful participation in issues of security. And in light of this, this is building on the UN principles of young people's participation in peace building, so that Amazing the Space will foster this kind of social cohesion and trust among young people and promote civic engagement and active citizenship. So I'm very encouraged by this. I actually met these young people during the past week. And what was significant here is that as they meet each other, as they interact with each other, they don't ask the question, are you British, are you Irish? They don't ask, are you Protestant or Catholic? They're actually beyond this. They actually connect at a very basic human level and then build on that. So this is very encouraging that this new generation can move forward in building the peace. So let me give you another example of what's happening in schools in Kenya right now. This year, Kenya has had over 100 schools being burned down, by students. Sometimes the adults were involved in this. This is a reaction to the Ministry of Education coming down in a more strict way regarding chief in exams. The Global Peace Foundation has been running this character and creativity initiative in schools since 2010. This is in public high schools across Kenya, and this focuses on building character, creativity, purpose, relationships, and learning. It involves an engagement with the leadership team, the teachers, and the students. And you can see here at the bottom some core values that are associated with each one of these competencies. So, for example, under character, integrity, respect for people who are different from you, it's very much encouraged and stimulated. And you know, we can expect a total child to come from a total school that is modeling, where teachers, the leadership team, the students themselves are modeling these competencies of character, creativity, purpose, relationships, and learning. When this happens, schools are more peaceful. In fact, in the schools we're working in, there is no issue with school burnings. There are no altercations with students from one school breaking out in fights and throwing stones over the wall of another neighboring school. These are things that used to happen in these schools before this initiative came up. You have students taking initiative in building peace clubs and building those connections. The big issue in Kenya is tribal identity. And this is still a big issue in our elections. In those elections that they have there, and that's actually coming up again next year. Another peace-building effort is getting students to become entrepreneurial and to become job creators. Many students are leaving high school in Kenya, for example, in other countries as well, where there are no traditional jobs available. So we started this effort called Leap Hubs, which are entrepreneurship and leadership incubators in secondary schools, whereby students are nurtured and mentored by mentors from businesses, from entrepreneurs, to start businesses and social enterprises. So this is happening in 24 schools across Kenya in 12 of its 47 counties. And right now, 120 innovative business and social enterprise ideas are in development by teams of highly motivated students, and 11 of these have launched. In all of the Leap Hub schools, there is peace in those schools. There is, we don't have violence, because these students in the Leap Hubs have a positive collateral effect across the entire student body, where classmates are seeing, hey, I can do this. Look at what these students are doing. They're coming from the same background. They have the same, ability as I have, and it's creating this kind of positive, impact across the entire school. And there's just some amazing things that these students are doing. This group here on the right with the blue T-shirts, they came up with an idea called a Blue Drive, that and they've already prototyped this, and they have investors getting behind it, whereby you can actually transfer data from a flash drive that you carry in your pocket to your smartphone through Bluetooth technology. That doesn't exist out there in the market, and they've already prototyped this. There's just amazing ideas. We just had a hookup with Leap Hub students at a boot camp recently, just a few weeks ago, with a brand new entrepreneurship school in Colorado Springs called Launch High School. And one of the questions that the Launch High School students asked the Kenya students is, what do you do in your free time? And one of the Kenya students said, we work on our business idea, because they know that there's not jobs out there. And when students are employable and employed, then you have more peace. Another peacemaking effort that's going on in Kenya is a child online safety campaign. This is becoming, as you know, peace in our time is being seriously disrupted by extremist organizations. And we were surprised when we did surveys with these students. We did this across schools across Kenya, About over 3,000 students, 1,500 teachers were involved. And we were surprised to discover that 22% of students were approached online by a radical organization. And one of the key aspects of this campaign was that your online character must be consistent with your offline character and that your digital print is permanent. We did this campaign together, with Google. So peace building and building peace in schools is not easy. Peace building is complex. I talked about the walls earlier on. A lot of questions came up in this conference we had in Belfast. Why aren't the walls coming down? And our partners up there, we have a partner called Cooperation Ireland. They said the first place that the walls have to come down is within people themselves, in their own hearts. Then the internal walls must come down first by building that empathy, that understanding. And it's really important too that that different sectors work together, like government, corporate, the social sectors, often work in isolation to one another, and together with schools. When you work in isolation, the problem is not being solved. So we're kind of advocating for public-private social partnerships to create a better environment that we can have a more lasting impact in these peace efforts. So I just want to conclude with one of the peace pledges that one of the student groups in Kenya have actually come up with, and you can see what they're up to.
We are first students from Nairobi, Kenya. We are glad to be part of a successful that has been taught by Google and Global Peace Foundation.
On responsible use of internet, we aspire to be young creative leaders, spreading history the values of online.
Check out what we did to promote peace in Kenya.
A few months ago, we received online safety training from Google and Global Peace Foundation. Coincidentally, when I wanted to share the learning experience, a friend shared a pop-up message on social media. On realizing it was a radicalization site, I shared the information to the public, and I am glad the government took immediate action to help promote peace in our country.
I pledge to shine the light of peace through safe internet use wherever I find conflict in my school, neighborhood, and country.
We stand with the youth of Ireland in their efforts towards peace.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony.
.org. We've been working with them to put on an international summit on character education that will have, a peace-making aspect to it. And there'll also be actually presentations in the forum this year focused on peace around the world. So those who are in the US or anywhere in the world that would be interested in coming into that, it's going to be from October 13th to the 15th in Washington, D.C. So go to the character.org website and you can find out more information. Yes, but be very interested to hear more about this Pan-African effort, and any way we can help, would be glad to.
And Claire, any thoughts from you?
Oh, thanks, Maggie. I would just reiterate that I also really see from U.S. perspective, just and the educators that we work with, just a real increase in interest. And I think that's because of things that are sort of happening on a micro level in classrooms and sort of on a global level to bring these types of skills and also conversations into class time. So that's all to say that it's really good that there is just sort of a growing agenda and priority, and sort of there's always been a need for it, but I do sort of to echo that I think that there's a real movement to do greater sort of peace education. Thank you.
Awesome. And we have one more question for you, Claire, specifically. And it's asking about elementary schools participating in the Global Video Conference. Can they go ahead and do that?
Oh, it's such a great question. So I'm afraid that the program is for 12 to 17-year-olds. However, we do the resources, the Sons of Dialogue, which you can download for free from iTunes, from our website, Tony Blair Peace Foundation. So not the generation.global website, because there you have to, the resources are actually sort of in for registered students, but the same resources you can download for free and use the activities. We have elementary school teachers that come to our trainings all the time. There's no doubt that a lot of the activities are really accessible and excellent for that age group. Just sort of at this point, we facilitate the video conferences only for students in 12, 17, so middle school and high school. But feel free to reach out to me if you're an elementary school teacher, and I'm happy to sort of walk through what activities and resources would be sort of most helpful to you. So thank you.
That appears to be all the questions that we have right now. So I just wanted to take this time to say thank you to all three of our panelists. And thank you to everyone in the audience. We appreciate you guys joining in on this conversation. And we apologize again for any of the technical difficulties that we've faced. Just as a reminder, the PowerPoints from each of today's presentations are available in the gray box on your screen under the handout section. You're more than welcome to download those. And then we also invite you to register for the next webinar in this series, which is taking place on October 5th at this exact same time. This webinar will feature leadership and entrepreneurship. The Global Peace Foundation will follow up in the next few weeks with registration information for that. But thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie.